Hello, howdy, and hi. Travis reacting here, reacting to things and such. Today we have a video from Atozy. Technically, well, his name is now pronounced Atozy. Originally it was A2Z, but everybody was like, oh, Atozy. Now he's Atozy. Talking about a family of people who were or had their house stolen of some sort. I was in real estate, so maybe I'll have some opinions that will help with, I don't know if they'll help, just opinions about the process, maybe see some things that other people don't, and opinion things that other people wouldn't opinion. Of course, original video, link down below, and his channel, so go check him out, Atozy. Also, everything in here is an opinion and allegations of opinions. The only opinion I have is that you're sexy, and that is a fact. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's jump into the video. And of course, this is gonna be at one and a quarter speed, so it's gonna be a little bit faster. If you don't like me pausing and stuff like that, then watch the original stuff, you ding dang dingus. Okay.
Just a $200,000 home because of a $2,000 tax bill that they might have not even owed. What? Yes, this is a real thing that happened to this Michigan family, and their fight has now reached the highest court in the country. And this story genuinely had me stumped for a second, because every time I thought I kind of figured out what was going on, more details came out, and I was like, okay, what's going on here?
So well, I guess he's gonna explain it. It's a tax bill.
$2,241.93. Not $22,000, not $222,000, just $2,240.
Which this is like in real estate and stuff like that. You can have the city can take your stuff eventually and sell it. I think for banks and stuff like that, they don't as much. Like they will rack up fees and debt and eventually take your home. But once it gets a lot higher, city, I don't think that they don't play. They'll just take it. They'll be like, yeah, you didn't, whatever. We're going to assume it's abandoned. It's ours.
$1.
Eventually, it takes a while. This is not quick.
Somehow, that number eventually led to a Michigan family losing a home that had been assessed for tax purposes at nearly $200,000. So obviously, if you're thinking, okay, there's got to be more to the story. Yeah, you're absolutely right, because there is a whole lot more to the story. So this whole case revolves around the Pung family and their house in Isabella County, Michigan. 35 years ago, Timothy Scott Pung bought a 3-bedroom house where he and his wife raised their family. According to the Pacific Legal Foundation, which now represents the family, the house gave them exactly what most people hope for when they buy a house: stability, memories, and something to pass on to the next generation. So after Scott unexpectedly passed away in 2004, and his wife later on passed away in 2008, Scott's son Mark continued living in the home with his own wife and young child. So far, you know, incredibly sad story, but at least it was a whole.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's super sad, but like, you know, hopefully the way people do it now is you pass on real estate. You stay there forever. God, please stay there forever. In real estate, I always like told people, like, people would like move every like 2 years or so. I'm like, no, stay there. Like, unless you have a reason to move, like, stay there long. I mean, I just recently paid off a house. And it's like, you know, like, hey, just, I think we've been here 18, 19, 20 years or something like that. Paid off, you know, extra every month and stuff like that. Pay off your house, and then boom, you owe zero. So yeah, stay as long as you can. There's no reason, unless you're making big money, don't move. You're not losing anything unless there's like a real big reason. There's no reason to move.
They could stay within the family.
Stay, let it get value go up.
Problems didn't start until
get a home to begin with. Get anything you can get your hands on. At least you get in the market, a condo, a town, whatever. At least everything starts, because everything generally in real estate always goes up. Hopefully not too fast, but it just goes up.
After the county decided the family no longer qualified for something called Michigan's principal residence exemption. Basically, it's a tax exemption that's available.
Yeah, so like a what is it called here? My head is just homestead. It was homestead exemption. It's just a reduction on your how much you would owe for taxes. Usually, like, it's a small, very small amount, like $15,000. You know, houses are like $300,000-$400,000. It's like, you know, nothing. It does like also reduce here in Texas, like it reduces how often, like you'll have your house is valued at $500,000, but it can only go up like by 10% a year until it reaches that amount. It's still stupid. It goes up way too quick.
For qualifying primary residences. And the Pung family believed the exemption should continue because family members were still living in the home. But
they might have had to refile it, which I think you can, like, well, I don't know if they would go back. Maybe they'd go back a couple years if you like figure it out.
Fortunately, the local tax assessor disagreed. So now, this wasn't just like one of those situations where
you just
someone
refiled
shrugged and said, fine, whatever. No, the family actually challenged the decision before the Michigan tax tribunal, and they actually won. So according to the tribunal, because family
tribunal, Is it pronounced tribunal or tribunal?
Members and beneficiaries of the estate continued living in the house. They didn't have to file additional paperwork to keep the exemption. So, at that point you would think, okay, everyone just packs up their legal folders and, continues on with life. Maybe an awkward handshake or two.
You could have just easily filed an exemption. If it's the same way, it should just be like paperwork done. Mind you, there are people out there, and if you're a child or adult or whatever, ask your parents or talk to yourself. Have you filed that? So a lot of people will forget that there's an exemption like that and just be like, oh, this is just like whatever paperwork, don't need it. And they just won't even file it. It's free to do. Contact your city about it.
I don't know, but apparently, no, that didn't happen. So according to court filings, the assessor denied the exemption again anyway? What?
Yeah.
How could they do that? So the Pacific Legal Foundation even points to a testimony where after being reminded about the earlier ruling, the assessor responded, I don't care what he says. The law says that you do. What about the ruling? What?
I don't care.
The problem with the story, so much of it just doesn't make sense. It just seems so incredibly unfair to the family. What kind of government official responds like that after losing? That just doesn't make sense whatsoever. But from there, the dispute snowballed out of control. The family says the county treated the property as delinquent over a tax bill that they never should have owed in the first place. So Isabella County, meanwhile, argues the family had years to resolve the issue, received repeated notices, and failed to pay the taxes the county believed were due. So right away, you've got two completely different versions of the same story. And unfortunately for the Pungs, while everyone was
arguing, cities don't care. The cities are, just give me my money. We don't care about you. Give me my money. Like fighting taxes and all that kind of stuff is horrible too. Never like if you can go in front of an assessor, you try to like go hat in hand, bring your stuff to bring down your taxes. You may get a chance. You go before the people, they don't give two hoots. Like, if you want to like protest your taxes and stuff like that, these people, it's like, oh, give us some money. We need our money. What are you going to spend it on? God, so I hate city spending so much. Like they're always asking for more money. And in the last decade real estate has gone up so much. I'm like, where'd that money go? Put in your own damn pockets, probably.
Arguing about who was right, the foreclosure process just kept moving forward. Now, before we get to the Supreme Court, we need to talk about what actually happened to the house, because this is where the numbers start looking very bizarre. So the county eventually foreclosed on the property over what had grown into about $2,241 in tax debt. And remember, this wasn't some abandoned house that's been sitting empty for like 20 years. No, Mark Pung, his wife, and their young child were living there, and they were ultimately evicted from the house. Then, Isabella County put the property up for public auction. I can only imagine how frustrating this is. Property tax rate in Isabella County. Wow, that's a high property tax rate, 1.36. Essentially, it seems like they're foreclosing on the house for 1 year of owed property tax. That's quick. Unfortunately, I think this is one of those situations where you kind of just have to pay that property tax and appeal it and then wait for the appeal process to go through, so you just don't lose.
That's what I was thinking. Like, wouldn't it be easier? Well, I mean, you would have to then fight it, but like be easier to pay it and then try to get your money back. Although the amount of money they spent on legal fees and stuff like that with a lawyer seems already too much. It should be a cheaper process. But also, like, didn't he already say like, no, you had to refile? Isn't that? Let me go back. Hold on. So, I mean, I looked it up briefly. It is basically like a homestead. This is so weird. Like, like to go to the tribunal, say like, we shouldn't have to file that. Why didn't they could have just like I didn't look in the paperwork. It should just be like simple, like you sign and then you submit. Why didn't they submit it at that point? It's just to fill out and send. Why didn't they do that? Like, it seems like, oh, we don't want to have to sign this one document and so put it in. I don't know, because the property already changed hands. I'm assuming it went in the new them, in which case the city would reassess the value already. So it's not like they were trying to avoid that, unless they didn't move it out of the previous owners, his father's name, to avoid a reassessment. So I don't know why they wouldn't have just like gone to the tribunal, fought it, and then just filled out paperwork or something like that to submit it. Like, why'd you? I don't get it. I don't get that.
So you just don't lose your house, because I can only imagine being displaced from your house.
Yeah, it's so much worse right now.
That tax bill. What an overall nightmare for the family, though. But it gets so much worse because, the house, which the county had assessed for tax purposes at roughly $200,000, it sold for $76,000.
Why wait this long, though?
house sold for 40% of its assessed value. Now, obviously, before anyone jumps to the comments saying like, well, that's assessed value, that's not the same as market value, you're absolutely right. They're not identical. Yeah. So counties themselves will tell you that the tax assessments don't reflect on what a home would sell for on the open market. But here's the part that made a lot of people raise some eyebrows because, you know, about 18 months after buying the house in that auction, a new owner sold it again, this time for $200,000.
18 months after the auction? That's a ridiculous amount of time. That's a huge amount. 18. Wait, how long has this been going on? They've lost it. This is so weird. Over like one, they should have filed a new homestead exemption basically, and then just move on, right? And then fought them, whatever. And then also pay the $2,000, like it was, I couldn't imagine a world where they didn't have any money to pay that or like get a small loan to like just basically stop foreclosure. Not saying that the city is doing what is correct, but talk about like an inability to like be accountable for your own actions at this point for $2,000. Also, the extra money that the house sold for at auction, which is very low at an auction. Usually the auctions don't go that low. So I could only imagine, well, I mean, assuming it was, I haven't been in any of the auctions, but usually there's people out there trying to make money. So you would assume it would go for more, but this is maybe a smaller town. Who knows? But any extra money that's after the debt is paid should go back to the family because they can't make money off of that kind of stuff. That's not something they can do. The city can't, at least. There'll be lots of fees and all that kind of stuff. Like even in foreclosure, you don't, if like say your house, they foreclose on you for $100,000 and your house sells for $400,000 at auction, they have to give you whatever's left over. Now, for banks, they'll just like add fee after fee after fee after fee, and like things will over time rack up, and you'll basically give you nothing. But I would have to imagine they gave them the $74,000 maybe or some amount, and then also accepting that money basically says, "Yep, I don't own this home anymore now." I guess it's so stupid.
Back to what the house was, you know, assessed for. When
it's horrible, but it's also like
so.
It's like you're in the middle of a problem, and it's like I'm not gonna do anything about it, but I'm gonna be the victim. Like, why didn't you like do this? Any steps to try to not lose your home? Because it's not quick that this happened. Why didn't you? You know, like try to stop it. I want to. It's like I'm the virtuous one. It's like maybe you don't go homeless.
That difference is nearly, you know, $119,000 between buying it and obviously it was bought by a flipper. But I digress. After the Supreme Court's 2023 decision in Tyler v. Hennepin County, which we'll get into in a minute what that really is, the county couldn't keep every dollar from the sale. Instead, the Pung family ultimately received about $73,000, which was essentially the auction price minus the taxes and other amounts the county said were owed. But the family argued that this wasn't enough. They were saying, give us the whole $195,000 because
no, they're stupid. No, we sold it at auction for that amount. They didn't sell it for 195. Then it changed hands. Just because the new owner sold it for more didn't mean anything. Stupid. They should have been they should have sold their own damn home at that point.
They were saying, if you're going to take our home, you shouldn't get the value at one number for tax purposes, sell it for far less at a government auction, and then tell us that low auction price is all it's worth. In other words,
it was all that's worth, because assuming the auction was done on the up and up and it wasn't like a backhand room deal, whatever, that is how much it's worth. That's how fair market value works. If no one was willing to buy it, say if they were trying to sell that exact same house for $500,000, is it worth $500,000? No. What if the only people that would buy it was $150,000? That's fair market value. Fair market is at when it's sold. Now in an auction, they're taking risk of like, you know, all the things that could be wrong with it, because usually in these auctions they don't let you inside the home to see what's going on with the thing. So it's a guesstimate. Like, okay, maybe hopefully it won't be, you know, we have to do like maybe we have to do roof, maybe we do this, you know, that kind of stuff. So you have to estimate on these auctions like how much work is going to be done, and that's the value that that was the highest bidder. Too bad, tough nuts.
They believe they should be compensated based on what the home was actually worth, not what happened to come out of a foreclosure auction. And that's essentially the question that eventually landed in front of the United States Supreme Court. So when the government takes and sells your home, what exactly counts as just compensation under the Constitution? And to understand why this case ended up in front of a Supreme Court, we kind of have to rewind a couple of years, because
it sold in an auction, unless they did something wrong with the auction. Too bad. It's like, well, they sold it and then 18 months later, so you already have a growth in the market, and then they resell it. It's like, you say that I think he said that they didn't do any work to it, but 18 months, yeah, I don't know about that.
This wasn't exactly the first time the justices had actually dealt with a case like this, because in 2023, the Supreme Court unanimously decided a case called Tyler v. Hennepin County, which is the one I mentioned earlier. That case involved a 94-year-old Minnesota woman named Geraldine Tyler, who lost her condo over unpaid property taxes. Here, the county sold her property for about $40,000, and the problem was that only around $15,000 of that money was actually needed to cover those taxes, penalties, and interest, and I guess costs. So I guess the government just decided to keep the rest?
No, they can't do that. They can't keep the rest of the money. They have to give it to her because they can't make profit off of foreclosure.
So thankfully, the Supreme Court looked at that and unanimously said, no, that's not acceptable. So justice after justice agreed that while the government has the power to collect unpaid taxes, it can't use a tax debt as an excuse to take more property than what it's owed. Or as Forbes said it, Tyler established basically the government can collect taxes, but it cannot use a tax debt as an excuse to take more property than it's owed.
Right, and then you have to return it. They will, and I think, this is just conjecture, but usually they don't just like $2,000 is way too low to foreclose on a property. Way too low. You wait until like it racks up a lot more money. You wait for a couple of years, and then you put interest and tax, all this extra like blah 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 on top. Then you go after it like when it's higher, not 2,000. It's too low.
This is a huge property rights victory. So when the Pungs brought their case,
it's normal.
Everyone naturally assumed that it would be another Tyler case.
No,
except it wasn't. See, after Tyler, Isabella County didn't keep every penny from the auction. The county returned the surplus proceeds from the sale, roughly, $73,766 after subtracting the tax debt. So the legal question, I guess, changed. Instead of asking, can the government keep the extra money, the Pungs were asking, what if the auction itself produces a stupidly low price? Like if you're
as long as the auction was set up correctly. Titties.
Your home is actually worth close to $200,000, but a tax foreclosure auction only brings in $76,000. Should the Constitution require the government to compensate you based on what your home is really worth? Or is the auction price good enough? And believe it or not, there wasn't a clear answer to that question.
It is a clear answer. It's too bad. As long as the auction's set up correctly, too bad. It's what it is. Like they could have sold their house to satisfy the debt. They could have, different argument of like, should the $2,000 should it reach a certain level before foreclosure process is started? That's a different question. Like a percentage of the home's value, like 25%. At that point, then foreclosure process can start or something like that. That's maybe a better solution. Or even 50%. It's just tough because houses, if it's a pristine house, yeah, great. Okay, that's $200,000. But what if they had put holes in the wall, floors all janked up, the roof is messed up, foundation, there could be a whole bunch of costs. So there's a lot of things that can go into that, but 2,000 is too low. And they didn't take any steps to fix this was the problem. It's like they could have taken out a small loan to pay it off or whatever, something.
Because that's why this case made it all the way to the highest court in the country. So what did the Supreme Court actually decide? Well, if you've seen some of the headlines, you might think the court basically said, yeah, the government can sell your house for whatever it gets at auction. So that's not exactly what happened. So writing for a unanimous Supreme Court, Justice Samuel Alito said that if a tax auction is ran fairly, the government doesn't have to pay the former owner what the home was worth on the open market. Instead, the court said the starting point is usually whatever the home actually sold for at auction, not what it might have been worth under different circumstances. But there's one part of that decision that's really important. The court kept saying if the sale is fairly conducted. So yeah, that's not really a slam dunk for either side. The Pungs lost on the argument that homeowners should automatically receive fair market value, but they won something pretty important too. So their case isn't over. And this is obvious.
Well, so okay, now they're going to try to go after the auction to make sure it was fairly run. And that's fair. If it was closed, no one's all right, you can buy this for this amount. All right, there you go.
Obviously, despite all the headlines saying the Supreme Court ruled against the family. That's, I guess, only half the story. Because the biggest question, the one that's specific to this foreclosure, is waiting to be answered. And then, of course, you get to the part about the opinion that made me do a double take. Now, even though the Supreme Court ruled against the Pungs and the big question they brought to Washington, there was still something that really stood out to me. Some of the justices basically said, hang on, we're not saying everything that happened here is okay. So apparently, Justice Clarence Thomas pointed out that the Pungs had already won part of their fight over the tax exemption, but the foreclosure still happened anyway. So Thomas wrote, what is still counting against the Pungs was wrong, and on my initial view, likely unconstitutional. And that's a pretty big thing to hear from a Supreme Court justice. So if you're sitting here wondering, wait, if one of the justices think this was, likely unconstitutional, How did the family lose? Well, the Supreme Court wasn't deciding on whether Isabella County handled this foreclosure correctly. It was answering a different question. The question was, if a tax auction is fair, does the Constitution require the government to pay someone based on what their house might have sold for on an open market? The court said no, but it also said it wasn't deciding whether this auction was actually fair or not. That's now going back to lower courts. So the next fight is about whether Isabella County's foreclosure and auction were fair enough in the first place.
They probably were. They probably were. And it's probably going to be, it's probably handled the same way. If not, then boom, they can win. Just to let it go this far is so stupid.
To me, it doesn't seem like the foreclosure is fair, especially based on the earlier ruling.
That could be another thing. The foreclosure amount is not fair. Like to foreclose on such a little amount seems on a home. Also from a, like, could anybody else HOA maybe could, I don't know. It feels like, once again, it should be a higher amount than 2,000. That part, okay. I mean, it may have been technically fair, but maybe the new rules
they seemingly ignore.
Waiting.
But it's like, no matter where you land on this case, the numbers are hard to ignore here. So you have a disputed $2,000 tax bill, a house in a county that's valued roughly at $200,000. Then obviously the county seized that house from them. They foreclosed on it. Then they sold it on an auction. It sold for $76,000 on an auction to most likely some flipper who then sold the house again for the market value of about $195,000.
So it probably wasn't worth 195 at that point either, because he said, Atozy said 18 months, maybe it was 180 at the time. Still
dollars about a year and a half later. Now, obviously, I don't know the details. This guy could have put a whole bunch of work into the house. And then, of course, it was a year and a half later. So, real estate markets in the U.S. have generally trended upwards, but they haven't trended up enough to where it's like, going from $76,000 to $200,000.
No,
crazy.
Well, okay, no, they can definitely, but no, if it was everything, roughly normal, it's a little high.
So he must have put a lot of work into it, or he just got one hell of a steal in auction, and that house is actually worth $200,000.
It probably, if I had to just go ahead and conjecture, roof, probably foundation's fine. I don't know. It was in Michigan, so they have, if they're flooding in the basement, if they have a basement up there, flooring, it's 35 years. How much money do they put on flooring and stuff like that? So he might put in 50,000. He could have put in 50,000 easily to do 50, 60,000 or something like that to get a lot of that stuff in. Yeah. Okay, yeah. 18 months too is a long time.
And that's kind of what the family was alleging here. There's just a whole bunch of variables in this case, but it's hard to not come to the conclusion that the Pungs were done wrong by the county here. But hey, let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video.
What?
Peace.
I don't think there's too much question here. I think it's pretty obvious. Other than the city foreclosing for such a low amount, that could be, whatever, could be a problem. For them, I'm very surprised, like for a homeowner to ignore the homestead exemption for so long because it sounded like they just had to refile it. They could have been fighting over the $2,000 to the city, whatever. But to take no steps to prevent foreclosure is so stupid. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the city is doing the right thing, but to not take any steps, it's like you got stabbed and I'm not going to go get it treated because I need to go do this other thing first, but I'm gonna let it get gangrenous and I'm gonna lose a leg or something. It's like, maybe we do some first aid, right? Let's do some like healing of the body. Let's prevent the foreclosure and figure it out later, because now it's how many years? The house is gone. Like, it's owned by somebody else. I think you can rebuy a house that you lose in in foreclosure, but you have to give them more money than the house was worth. I guess it's like 10 or 20% after the fact. That's still a thing you can do. If you lose a house in foreclosure, you can buy it back, but it's for more money. So I don't see how it's been so long. It's like, to do all this, they've taken a long way around to the right solution, where they should have filed the homestead. I don't know why they went to the tribunal to fight it. They should, maybe they were overassessed and they'd be fighting that, but they could have refiled a homestead exemption. It's pretty simple to do, unless it was an elderly thing, but I don't think he didn't say it was. So this is just a reminder, people, do the paperwork and mitigate the disaster, because right now it's a disaster. Lots of money spent, Like, I guess they didn't hire the attorney. Maybe they're doing pro bono. They've lost a house. They've lost out for $2,000. They could have taken like a small loan or something like that if they didn't have the $2,000. Mind you, they were living on, it's paid off. So it's minimal bills. And all this, now they're well, not homeless. They're probably living somewhere, renting somewhere, something like that, thinking maybe they're going to get big money back. They're not going to get big money back. All this for what? Like what's the, like, not saying that they shouldn't have paid the $2,000, but like all this for what? To be, to lose your home that you inherited? I don't think that's the brightest thing they could have done. I'll be honest. What's your thoughts? Should they have handled it differently? Should they have done something better instead of just waiting for the house to be stolen? Not stolen, I guess sold off by the government? Let me know down below. Like, subscribe. I'll see you later. Shazam. Boop.